Well, hello and welcome to Raj Sabha TV. You're watching India Fights Back with me, Rajat Kane. Well, India Fights Back is a show that brings home all that you need to know about the COVID-19 pandemic and how the world, and especially India, is fighting hard against it. Well, in this episode, we'll discuss a specific correlation between the COVID virus and the bacterial infection to begin with, and later we'll broad base on correlations between the COVID virus, post-COVID recovery, and what and which infections we need to be wary about. To begin with, in particular, the impact of secondary Staphylococcus aureus bacteremia on mortality in patients infected with COVID-19. Now, this is a specific scientific term for the bacteria, where a study was conducted in New York and where it was found that the bacterial infection is associated with high rate of mortality among those infected with the COVID-19. So how important it gets to study the coronavirus correlation with the bacterial infections and how we need to be wary of it so that we take immense care, especially for the ones who have just recovered from the COVID. Well, to discuss more on this, we are joined with extremely important panelists of three guests. Dr. Rakesh Mishra, he's Director, Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, that is CCMB. Well, Dr. Mishra, many thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. Dr. Sunila Garg, she's Director and Professor, Head of Community Medicine from Maulana Azad Medical College, that is MAMC, Delhi. Ma'am, many thanks to have you again on the show. And Dr. Saurabh Mittal, Assistant Professor, Pulmonary Medicine from AIIMS. Dr. Mittal, many thanks for joining us. Well, let me start with you, Dr. Mishra. Sir, to begin with, we know that every viral infection, to say of, leaves its footprints in some form or the other. We have seen that in the previous viral infections or as cases with chikungunya as well. Now, when we talk of the COVID, and of course, what is the correlation of COVID-19 virus and any bacterial infection?
So, as you just mentioned, that there's one report which is linking particular bacterial infection, which is otherwise a common thing, becoming more prominent in along with COVID infection. See, COVID is very new disease, it's less than a year, and we are still learning. And these kinds of correlates are really not yet. Even this study requires many other things to be confirmed. Generally, viral infection of this kind, which have a strong influence on the immune system and whole body gets stressed out. Many opportunistic infection which are otherwise contained in the body, they start to overtake. And even common flu, many times you see it becomes a bad flu, it actually turns the bacterial infection, and then you need to go to antibiotics. So I think at the moment, maybe clinicians can give more clearer answers. But I don't think there is a very strong correlation of any co-infection along with the COVID-19 virus. It has many other complications, but this one is maybe it is emerging now, and we will know more as more epidemiology and more this kind of analysis is carried out.
Right. That's really important. We need perhaps a little more analysis to study further between the correlation of virus and the bacterial infection. Well, nonetheless, Dr. Saurabh Mittal, Assistant Professor of Pulmonary Medicine, AIIMS, we know the chief body organ that COVID infects, or to say attacks, is of course our respiratory system. Usually, what complications can be attributed to the pulmonary system, to our respiratory system, along with the diseases that leaves footprint of a person who has just recovered from COVID-19?
Sorry, Rajat, I missed out on your point.
Yeah, Dr. Mittal, I'm asking for the person who has just recovered from COVID-19.
Yeah.
So what are the infections mainly associated with the respiratory system that one needs to be wary about?
Yeah. So most important thing is that post viral infection, if you look at the previous data on the influenza, there were a lot of pneumonia, secondary bacterial pneumonia after influenza. So
Mhm.
that's where the thinking of whether COVID-19 is also followed by secondary bacterial pneumonia came in the initial part of the pandemic. And as we went in more time of the pandemic, we realized that it was common, but maybe not as common as it was in the influenza.
Okay.
There were a lot of deaths in influenza due to the secondary bacterial pneumonias. But in COVID, the major cause of deaths was actually the severe ARDS rather than the secondary infections. But
Okay.
if you ask me, the pulmonary, I would say there are three important infections which we need to be. One is the bacterial pneumonia, which is commonly caused by Streptococcus aureus as well as Streptococcus pneumoniae.
Right.
Then, secondly, we have to look for the Aspergillus infection.
Mm-hmm.
That is a
Mm-hmm.
fungus. And third is the mucormycosis. That's also a
Okay.
fungus. So if you see, there were many reports in the media from Delhi as well as in the US of increasing Aspergillus and mucormycosis infections.
Mm-hmm.
Partly, it could be attributed to the use of steroids, which were being
Okay.
used for the treatment of severe COVID. So
Okay.
these are the three important things which we have to look for in patients who are recovering from COVID or in the late phase of active COVID.
Mm-hmm. Right, right, right. Dr. Sunila Garg, ma'am, usually when you talk of the COVID-19 infection, as is it like just to understand or to put things in perspective, how does you decide about how does one decide about the administration of any medicine to the patient, and what needs to be taken into consideration about that?
See, as Dr. Saurabh just pointed out, that we are basically dealing with the four types of respiratory infections, and before
Hmm.
that, extensive workup is also required. But
Hmm.
before that, I will also tell you, in Indian settings, we do have pulmonary tuberculosis also in a
Hmm.
major manner, and also we do have dengue infections also. So we sometimes we see the combination of these infections also, so which may affect that. Another thing
Hmm.
is that we do have lot of smokers also, so
Yeah.
that way and then that will make the combination of these with staph aureus or streptococcal aureus
Hmm.
infections, or fungal infections, much more kind of severe in terms of presentation. So we need to, first of all, anything, if we need to take on with regard to management of the patient, we need to look at the detailed history part and the
Hmm.
examination part, which plays a very, very critical role. And then
Right.
along with the rational diagnostic approaches, that
Hmm.
because you see, we are talking of right from the tertiary hospital to the mid-level district level hospitals, because the patients present everywhere, and to the
Hmm.
prime. So we have to see at least, whatever facilities are present at the mid level, they should be available for the complete management of the individuals. But nonetheless, our primary level physicians also need to be told that these are the minimum, like x-rays, or we talk of, now we are talking of CT scans also as point of test, basically,
Hmm.
which should be available at the primary level, so that we can diagnose it early. Along with that, the necessary blood investigations, the culture part of it. So you see, because culture is the gold standard for diagnosis when we talk of streptococcal infections and all that, through
Yeah.
sputum examination and all. It will
Hmm.
also depend on the stage in which the patient is, if the patient is really not fully conscious and all that, because this thing will lead to, these infections will lead to two things. One is they will prolong the hospitalization, and they lead to increased mortality. And we have
Right.
seen the mortality to the tune of 11 to 12 times more as
Hmm.
compared to the individuals who do not have pneumonia infections and all that.
Hmm. Right, right. That's very important, Dr. Garg. And let me go off to Dr. Mishra here. Dr. Rakesh Mishra, as we were just discussing in your previous reply to the query, in your initial remarks, you mentioned that perhaps more research and more empirical studies required in finding correlation between a particular set of bacteria and the COVID-19 virus. Now, we have seen that now, besides the acute respiratory distress syndrome, or I mean, there are some cardiovascular complications as well with the virus. Does any sort of bacterial infection makes the specifically the cardiovascular complications even more severe in the COVID patients?
So actually I'm not aware of that. Maybe there are few things, but the COVID 19 disease we are still figuring out. There are, for instance, there are mysterious components of this that
Okay.
you lose smell, you lose taste, and now there's a report that it can bridge the break the brain blood barrier and enter into the. Very rarely any parasites can enter. So this is there are many things that we are still being investigated over this, and people are the comorbidities are major cause of death. So which means multiple factors. So which wherever the weakness is there, and this virus comes and overwhelms the body, and then many other complications start to develop. So these are the issues that are really just emerging. A specific link with the cardiovascular, I don't know if there is any bacterial link with that, but know that the thinners are given, and that was these are the few things we learned, that many people, many lives could be saved, which was not possible in the beginning. For example, in Italy or Spain, when they were going through in the early phase of this disease. By the time it came to India, we were far more informed, and our healthcare system could manage really very well because of those things. I think these are the issues. And for instance, why we are having more asymptomatic in India, why we are doing much better, are we genetically different, are we have earlier exposures of it? So many unanswered questions need to be tackled right now.
That's important, especially like we are having a little, rather extremely varied cases. Like some are symptomatic and some are completely asymptomatic, and it's still work in progress as we talk about the virus. Dr. Mittal, I mean, will you just just elucidating on your points further about how this virus in particular has, I mean, okay, if not correlation, then at least like you need to be wary or cognizant about several other diseases in the body. Now here, if we talk particularly about the cardiovascular issues, how severe can the pre-existing cardiovascular problem gets with the COVID-19?
So if you look at the virus, it incites a inflammation in the body. That is means it causes swelling in the various parts of the body, and it leads to blood clots formation. So patients who are having previous cardiac diseases, they have like coronary artery disease, where there is increased chances of thrombosis in the coronary arteries of the heart. So the virus increases the chances of development of thrombosis in heart. So that is one reason for developing cardiovascular comorbidity. Number two, virus causes an inflammation in the entire body. So even the heart is inflamed, so heart function can also go down during the acute virus. So this is primarily related to the virus itself rather than the secondary bacterial infections. But if a secondary bacterial infection occurs, that can worsen the cardiac function because of the sepsis and infection.
Right. Dr. Garg, like as both the panelists, Dr. Mittal as well as primarily Dr. Mishra, just mentioned that it's still work in progress and we are studying virus further. And of course, it requires a furthermore study to understand correlation of virus with any bacterial infection, and specifically with the Staphylococcus aureus. Now, if we chart figures about, or for that matter, if we chart a group about a particular age group that needs to be wary of certain clinical characteristics, and so which age group you will put in the bracket of particularly prone towards severe symptoms, or for that matter, any severe consequences of infection?
Yeah, before that, I will like to add that the virus has got three properties: inflammatory properties, thrombolytic properties, thrombotic properties, and immunogenic properties. And as has been mentioned by Dr. Saurabh, that we can see the clots anywhere. So that's where, we see deep calf muscle tenderness and all. Coming to your second question, our elderlies, that means 60 years and above, and more the age increases, more is the risk of, basically the having the infections, because more is the confinement to the bed. These individuals, they tend to, lead more sedentary style and all that. And along with this, the more sedentary style you lead, more is the occurrence of obesity. And then I will also like to add over here, which Dr. Saurabh added, that cardiovascular disease is one of the things, and we all are aware of that. Diabetes is one of the important things which makes an individual vulnerable to acquire this staphylococcal infections as well. Because, and we also have to be particularly more clear in Indian settings, because you see, India is the diabetic capital of the world, and Delhi is the diabetic capital of India. So that's where we need to look at the three components. One is obesity, second is the cardiovascular diseases, and third is diabetes, which makes an individual more vulnerable to acquire these infections. And again, we see that more majority of the times the infections are coexisting. That means when we talk of diabetes, we will find hypertension or any other cardiovascular diseases, and they tend to increase with the period of time. And your question is very appropriate at this point of time, because recently, only 2-3 days back, Ministry released a report on longitudinal, aging study, in India, and which is first of its kind. So this is where, the report teaches us how much are the problems of elderly, and they make them vulnerable, particularly to non-communicable diseases. And we have to take this as a very serious problem when we talk of other infections as well, because they will be playing a very critical, important role in terms of rehabilitation also.
Right. Well, that's really important, ma'am. And of course, like the longitudinal aging survey which the ministry conducted, it's clearly it's a gigantic information about the number of elderly persons in our country, and of course that will help further in the policy decision, and especially in the times of pandemic, as to how we take care of our elderly population. Dr. Mishra, now on a mere hypothesis, as you explained that this virus, particularly SARS-CoV, requires furthermore study to understand its characteristics and correlations with other microorganisms and microbodies. Now, as we have a new mutant, so and given it's also under study, and there is still no clear correlation between the severity, but we know it's spreading faster. So how will that impact the study of the existing COVID-19? Will that burden our scientific community even further?
No. In fact, that helps those things, because the variation and looking at the differences helps us understand the properties, rather than just asking a simple question. Comparative aspect is always helpful. And like, for instance, the new virus, when changes are occurring and infectivity is more, now people try to figure out why infectivity is more. So multiple reasons, that it binds more tightly now to the cells because it's a change its coat little bit, it's the tighter affinity to the receptor that it binds to. It makes more viral particles, so that means it's replicating more efficiently and producing more virus, and that is why it's more efficient in spreading. But more spreading doesn't mean that symptoms are changing, symptoms are the same. So now you can link the infectivity is one thing, symptoms are other things, and we have to now here be very careful that we don't have to look for any new means or anything. Same methods which are used for treating the existing variant will be used for treating the new variant as well. Only thing that can happen is the number of cases will increase. So hospital may get more stressed. So you have to do different kinds of management and don't have to look for a new drug or anything. While having said that, maybe let's say South African variant which is coming, or in another new variant can come, they can have even different kinds of properties. For example, that requires apparently much more antibodies to neutralize, so that may have some implication in immunotherapies or plasma therapy, or even sometimes you can say vaccine things, although those things need to be established. But other treatments don't need to be changed. So these are the mutation is very normal thing in biology, and most
Yeah.
of the biology we understand today is because of the mutation, because that's what gives a difference. And then that's very powerful tool of genetics to create mutations and compare the normal organism versus mutant. So these are very helpful. But of course, we know that this virus mutates. Now looks like it is mutating to a degree that new variants are coming, and we have to be very watchful, because even if symptoms are the same, speed or the response to antibodies, many other things can change. So depending upon what kinds of mutation it is, what kinds of variants are emerging, we have to always optimize our strategy to control it. Sometime methods of spread needs to be put in place, so that like mask or something, they are more important. Sometime if it is not responding to drug, then you have to look for new interventions in terms of pharmaceutical interventions. So that is very is dynamic game. That is what is the problem with these kinds of infections, that they keep changing, and we have to keep a watch. Technology exists now, we can monitor and we can be prepared. And most important thing will be, by some means we have to reduce the number of cases. That is what is going to be the key thing, because if you have large number of cases for large number of time, we are giving opportunity for the virus to come up with the new avatars, because it's mutating and one of them may become bad. So India has a huge reservoir of virus, which means infected people, and that's where we have to focus, that isolate cases, test them, and if new variants seen, pay more attention to that, and that will be helpful. So in this case, in this way, mutations are very, so these variants that have emerged, you have noticed them, but mutations are constantly happening. Even in India, collection of what Indian labs have put the sequence data of this virus, some 4,000 odd sequences, several thousand mutants, more than 5,000 mutants we have catalogued and kept. But since they are of no consequence, they don't bother us, but they are very useful. Following up that, based on that, we can say what is the path of the virus, which city to which city is going, which is early, which is late, and we can establish the relationship of the spreading of the virus. So these are very useful in many different ways, but of course they can be new variants and new problems also.
Okay. And those new problems would be, sir, would you like to elucidate?
So, new problems like it may become more nasty against vaccines. It may not respect the existing immunity. So for the moment, there are very rare instances of reinfection, although people have been worrying about, because that's one real problem. But so far, I mean, so many tens of millions of cases, number of reinfections are so small, less than 100, maybe around 50. So which is negligible. That means once infected, the immune system of the recovered person is able to manage reinfection. But if a virus changes too much, it may start to reinfect. Or a virus may, as this one has become very fast in infection, some may not respond to most popular or most used drugs at this moment. And then, of course, their correlation with the co-infection and comorbidities are there. So it's very, very mixed kind of thing, and one has to keep a watch constantly how in watch direction the things are going, and then keep changing the strategy accordingly.
Right.
But even at the cost of being repetitive, the best strategy is to contain the spread, because that is the biggest weapon that we have today. Because if the spreading is more, first of all, it puts stress on the health system, much problem, and gives the virus more chance to mutate and come up with new versions of this.
Right. Well, Dr. Mishra, many thanks for your views. Just before we wrap up the show, Dr. Sunila Garg, just a very small question here. As Dr. Mishra explained in fairly vast details about the new mutant. Now, I just need to understand from the perspective of a community medicine expert. Now, how do you see the new mutant? Is it an opportunity to study this virus further, or would you also see it in finding correlation with any other secondary infections?
Definitely. One is that basically we already know that around 23 mutations have taken place, and we need to go into depth as to what are the different kinds of mutations. Particularly, we are worried about when there are mutations which are related to spike proteins.
Right.
That is where we need to be very conscious. Second thing is, as has been pointed out, that the more are the mutations, and this new kind of mutant virus is more transmissible. That means if we talk of in terms of R naught, it is 70 times more infectious,
Yes.
but not more serious. But
Okay.
another thing, along with that, which will be there is that when, we will be like, government is coming out with different guidelines that we need to, institutionally admit that they should be institutionalized, or they may be there in the hospital. That means, we will be having more surge of cases in the hospital. So more hospital acquired pneumonias are bound to occur. If they don't go to the hospital also, let's say, we will have more occurrence of, or more prevalence. Prevalence means occurrence of cases at one point of time. We will have more prevalence of community acquired pneumonias as well. So we
Right.
need to be ready with the multidisciplinary teams, whether we talk of pulmonologists, whether we talk of internists, whether we talk of rehabilitation people. So everybody will have a critical role to play in times to come, apart from our, the diagnostic people, the lab people and all that, because we need to be ready with a multidisciplinary team to address this issue in its complete perspective.
Right. That's very important, and many thanks, ma'am. Just last few minutes, Dr. Saurabh Mittal, and it's on the queue, as Dr. Garg just mentioned, that we require a multidiscipline team. So, as a pulmonologist, what do you look for when you study further this new mutant?
What we are concerned as a clinician is the whether it will cause a severe disease. So as of now, till now, there is no sign of this, no outside reports that it causes a severe disease. But you never know. Like sir, also it may continue to occur, and it may become a new virus, and which may be more severe. So we need to look into that, whether the virus causes severe disease. Number two is the transmissibility, which has now become clear, but we don't know the accumulation of more mutations may change that also. So we need to work with the virologist and the microbiologist to look at the behavior of this virus. And
Right,
so clinical team has to work with the diagnostic microbiologist. Yeah.
Right. But many thanks, Dr. Saurabh Mittal from AIMS, and Dr. Sunila Garg from MAMC, and Dr. Rakesh Mishra from Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology. Many thanks for joining us and throwing light upon extremely important aspect of the behavior of COVID and its correlation with any secondary infection. Of course, it's work in progress, but certainly there is a lot we can do to save ourselves, or at least safeguards ourselves from the COVID-19 pandemic. Here is a small appeal by RSTV to all our viewers. Well, defeat coronavirus pandemic. Keep wearing mask, keep washing your hands 20 seconds at least, and do not forget to maintain the physical distancing. These are few things that can help us in defeating this pandemic.